Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today we will be talking about sports photography and 7 different tips on how to up your game in the field. So if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance that you A, either shoot sports already, B, have shot sports in the past and didn't get the results you like, or C, just want to gain a general knowledge of action and sports photography in general. So here are 7 different tips that I use on a game-to-game basis to get the results that I want and the results that'll stand out amongst your peers. Tip number 1, have knowledge of the game you're shooting. I cannot stress this enough. Just like any aspect of life, whether it be in school or a new job, you want to have a basic understanding of what you're getting into. Sports like basketball, hockey, soccer, baseball, they all have different fundamental rules. And before you head into these sporting events, you kind of want to know what these rules are, who's playing, what the positions are on the field, and all that kind of stuff. Shooting sports is a lot about knowing what's going to happen and kind of anticipating what's going to happen and not simply reacting. And once you've shot sports over a while and kind of learned the sports, you get a good feel of what's going to happen at what times of the game, whether it be in basketball when a player's lining up for a free throw, or in soccer in the final minute of play, what to shoot for and what to react to at that point. Again, sports are kind of crazy in nature and you don't know what's going to happen because nothing is calculated at all. But if you can kind of do some research beforehand, know the key players on the field, what players' tendencies are, what they like to do after they score a goal or make a basket, or what they do when they get frustrated. So it's always important to have those things at the back of your mind before you go out and shoot. So when you're out there in the field and a certain thing happens, you know what to shoot for and what to look for out on the big field. Tip number 2, shooting with a telephoto lens. For me personally, I like to use the Canon 70 to 200 millimeter 2.8. This is the Mark III version. Personally, it's my favorite lens to date because it's very versatile. It can get the wider angle shots, but also get nice and tight into those areas that you can't really get with a 50 millimeter or even a 24 to 70 millimeter lens. Shooting sports like basketball and hockey and soccer, you're gonna need that telephoto lens to get punch into the action and also capture those facial expressions when baskets happen or goals happen and all that kind of fun stuff that happens in sports. I know that the 70 to 200 is kind of a pricey lens, but brands out there, Canon, Nikon, Sony, they do offer a 70 to 300 millimeter lens. The f-stop is 4 to 5.6 kind of thing, so it's not the greatest in low light. I started out with that lens and I use that when shooting soccer and basketball, and you can kind of bump up the ISO and get away with that. But that's a great alternative for you guys starting out as a sports photographer. Tip number 3, shooting with a high shutter speed. I cannot stress this enough. Personally, I like to shoot at 1/1000 as my shutter, or even higher depending on the lighting situations. When I'm shooting baseball, it's a little higher because it's sunnier outside and I can have my ISO nice and low. But when shooting basketball and hockey, the lighting situations aren't the greatest. I still like to have it at 1/1000 and kind of play with the ISO there. For me, shooting with a full frame definitely helps, but don't be afraid to kind of push up your ISO. You can live with grain in post and deal with that in post. You never want to underexpose your shot and not get the results you want. You can kind of live with grain. And if it's a good photo, no one's going to care that it's a little grainy or not. So make sure your shots are properly exposed. Make sure your shutter speed is nice and high and you'll get the results that you want. Tip number 4, telling stories. What separates Getty photographers and newspaper photographers and all the other WOW photographers from each other is their ability to tell stories. My favorite part of photography is being able to tell these stories, whether it be music, sports, or different events that I shoot. I always want to kind of go into every game with a different story that I want to get told, whether it be focus on different players that are playing, if they have a historical milestone coming up, the significance of some games, or just focusing on what the implications of the game are. By the end of the game, I kind of want to have a series of photos together that when they get put together, they tell a story, and they're not just action shots, they're candid shots, they're shots that show emotion, they're shots that kind of speak deeper than the sport being played. That kind of leads into my next tip, and that's tip number 5, and it is a headline. I kind of relate it back to when you see a newspaper and the first kind of cover photo that they use. And when I head into a sporting event, I always have kind of a picture already mapped out in my head, like, what do I want this headline photo to say? Or what do I want this headline photo to be? A good example of this is DeMar DeRozan's first game back in Toronto, and I had this image in mind of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan embracing, and I knew that would happen at the end of the game. So my biggest priority wasn't really getting action shots of him and Kyle playing on the court. It was really capturing the moment after the game when they embraced for the first time after playing each other, after being teammates and best friends. And you know the story behind that. The Raptors traded him away for Kawhi Leonard, and Boardman does get paid at the end of the day. So that was kind of the headline I had in mind, the photo I had in mind, and I got the shot, which was great, and it all turned out perfectly. Tip number 6, different angles. While shooting sports, there's always a designated photo area. In basketball, it's under the net. In baseball, it's kind of in the photo wells, and in hockey, it's in the corners. Over my time shooting sports, I've had the privilege of shooting in different arenas and different locations, different stadiums, and kind of getting to learn different and fun kind of photo perspectives for different shots that I want. Oftentimes, photographers will get kind of redundant with their photos and shoot in the same spot, and your photos can get old over a while if you're kind of shooting the same teams in the same sport over and over and over again. So my favorite part is kind of exploring the arena, always making sure that you're not getting in anyone's way, but also kind of expanding your creativity out there. I like to get high and shoot at a different perspective. You can get some really cool shots this way, and it'll really stand out amongst your peers when shooting sports. And finally, tip number 7, shooting after the whistle and shooting in stoppages of play. As I mentioned before, I like the candid aspect of sports photography, and some of the best moments happen after the whistle has sounded. A good example of that is Fred VanVleet's notorious scream in Game 6 against the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. What was great about this photo is that the whistle sounded, the play was over, but he kind of went over to his bench and let out a big scream. There was a good chance that I could have missed that shot entirely because I could have been looking at photos during a stoppage of play, or just simply not paying attention at that time. And that's a good rule in sports photography. Always be prepared for the unexpected, because you could get a shot that no one else would get. And it's a really cool feeling when you get a shot captured that no one else captures, and they kind of tell a story. And not only do people in the audience appreciate it, the athletes themselves appreciate the candid moments that you get to capture. So that's been my 7 different sports photography tips that'll help you out in the field. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Please leave a like, please subscribe if you haven't done so before, and leave a comment below on what you would like to see from this channel in the future. And that's all for today. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.